Hello there, everyone. Welcome to That Show with Mahy. My name is Stephen May, and today I'm talking to my wonderful agent, Mr. Mark Morrissey. Hi, Mark. How you going?
Good morning. Well, thank you.
Excellent. Mark, I was just sort of talking to my partner. I was getting a little bit nervous talking to you and sort of thinking about the first time.
Oh, are you serious?
Well, the first time I actually I met you, I've been with you for 14 years. And I graduated from Whopper in 2006. And I remember meeting you going, hi, and that first initial feeling. And it started to come up again to go, I can only imagine what it's like for people when they're coming out of schools or they're coming into this industry. And what's the expectation of this? Almost you want an agent so much and you want to work in the industry so much. That excitement came back to sort of be talking to you about yourself, but also the industry.
Well, thank you. That's very flattering, and I'm not sure it's justified. One of the things that I try and do, or I have been doing over the last 15 years, is spending as much time as I can meeting the graduates before they graduate, be it Whopper, VCA, UTA, NIDA, going there early in that year, so that it normalizes what the relationship is. It doesn't become the set of expectations or the nervousness that young grads have when they graduate. Of course, it's such a terrifying experience when you're on stage and it's a room full of people like me. And then you have to come out into this alien foyer and try and mingle. But I try, and a number of members of the Morrissey team fly all around the country and meet with the graduates beforehand, just to settle, just to educate those graduates and other people about the process and what we're looking, and that we're not scary. We're hoping to become your partner in the long term. We're hoping to work with you and share all of those wonderful times in your career and be there when they're not so good times. So it's just that aiming to humanize what the process is, I think.
Absolutely. I guess there's a lot of people at the moment in third year thinking, we're all online, everything's happening. What can the third years do at the moment?
Yeah, it's such a difficult position for them, isn't it? I've already reached out, and I had a group Zoom meeting with the guys up at QUT about 2-3 weeks ago, just to try and relax their anxieties, because a lot of these kids were expecting to be performing their graduate performances in October, November, and now it's been pushed back to March of next year. But what I can say, and I was thinking about this in the car this morning, Stephen, even though I wasn't driving around because I'm staying isolated. When I was driving here in the car, is that what are some of the things that you and your friends and your non-active friends are saying at the moment? And that is, oh my God, I'm so bored with what's on Netflix, or I'm so bored with entertainment. I can't wait for the new thing coming. And I see that as a really wonderful sounding message to all of the actors out there, that there are a number of essentials in this world. And what we do in the entertainment business is to provide a certain service to everyone, and everyone is eager and keen and can't wait for the next television show or the next theatre show or the next film or whatever the next around the corner piece of entertainment there is. So I see that as, our light on the hill. That's what we're all working towards. We'll get over this, as we will get over this, and we'll all start working towards getting back to doing what we do, and that's entertaining people as much as we can.
Yeah, great. Now, I've been very fortunate that we've had this relationship ongoing for 14 years and a wonderful team.
So am I.
A question that I get a lot on social media is, I just wanted to ask you a question. I'm kind of looking for an agent, and you can just see they're skirting around. Would you mind sending a good word to Mark or to the Morrissey team? Now, if I think a person is very talented, I would certainly suggest and go, look, of course, if I don't know them, how do they touch base with you or your team in a way that it's not intrusive, in a way that it's not pestering, because I'm sure you have hundreds of people, or I think people assume that you have hundreds of people coming at you. Is that correct? And how could they do it?
It is correct. We would probably filter through, I would say, maybe 40 to 50 applications a week.
Wow.
If an introduction comes via someone like yourself, if you think someone is special, we'll most certainly pay attention. We'll most certainly take the meeting or talk to them beforehand. We generally get introductions via casting agents who come across a wonderful new talent that's not represented, or a producer or a director. The industry tends to, it's like a big ocean of information. The waves send this wonderful talent into the shore, and you're lucky if you're there to pick it up. Other actors that we represent, or then there's the normal process, and that is we go along and see as much as we possibly can in live theatre. There are clients that we've offered representation, or that we've approached from seeing their performance in a short film. We've even had a couple of instances, which maybe I shouldn't be sharing, but you're sent through an application by a young actor, and you see their work in the short film, and you acknowledge their work is good, but then you see somebody else that they're doing a scene with. They're really interesting.
Yeah.
So it comes to you via a whole range of influences. I think it's that circle of influence that you as an agent or a manager trust, that their taste is similar to what you would like to represent. And so that's the process. Applications that come in, occasionally, yes, occasionally. We look at everything. So the process is applicants send through their material. We view all the material generally one day a week, and generally it's viewed by at least two people. So we try to share what comes in on a Thursday, view it. We then discuss our responses to it. I suppose I'll be honest and say 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, we have to pass and explain that they're not quite right for us, or they need a little more development before they approach us. But generally, it's a process of the industry indicating to us that they think this person might be an interesting fit, or that we are able to see somebody's talent and respond to that.
Yeah, great. Another question I'd like to ask, being an agent, you've probably had that many ups and downs with clients, as you spoke about before. What's it like? I mean, you have to deliver some pretty bad news sometimes. Someone's gotten down to that final cut, and then all of a sudden you get a no. But there's also those winning moments when you get those yeses. Is there a couple of ones that sort of stand out for you so far in your career that you sort of go, oh, wow, I just loved doing that?
Look, I suppose I'll balance that, because just recently I had a heartbreaking situation with a client that I stayed on the phone for quite a long time, and they were really struggling through this time, really struggling. And they were isolated, they were by themselves. A whole series of events had taken place for them not to be in their job anymore. And, I think I should not do this gig anymore when that doesn't affect me. I think I should stop doing this when I lose that human touch with people. And he's good now. I'm happy to say he's finding his way out of it. But that was a particularly low point most recently. And also, when generally, this is the irony of what we all do. It feels like a lot of the time the projects that you desperately want and you prepare more than anybody else for that role are the ones that just seem to quietly slip by, and the ones that you least expect you end up with. Yeah. So sharing that, there's, and you'll know this, there's the typical response you get from the industry, which is, oh, they've gone in another direction, and you kind of roll your eyes and they, yeah, right. Or the most important thing, I think, with your relationship with your agent is to have a trust there. And that is even when the phone isn't ringing, I think I said this the other day, when the phone's not ringing, that you trust that your agent is picking up the phone and chasing for you, or believes in you, or, yeah. Or when you don't get the job, it hurts as much as it hurts you. That truly is a wonderful partnership in representation and in the entertainment industry. The highlights, goodness gracious, there's been so many wonderful highlights. One particular highlight was with a client, and I'm not going to name who it was, but everyone can do their research on this, is that I was in Byron at, I think it was the very first time I'd ever did a retreat, like a health retreat.
Right.
And we were at Olivia Newton-John's place, which was my wife had set up, and we'd been invited there. And anyway, you're not allowed to take your phone into this wonderful retreat called Gaia. And I think it was the second day or the third day, I get this urgent, I took my phone. I couldn't help myself. And I get this series of urgent tweets saying, call me. And it was an American manager to one of my clients. And he said, he's got it. This is a game changer for us all. And so excitedly, I call the client, and he's jumping up and down the other end of the phone in LA because he's just got this amazing lead in the franchise. Yeah. But I couldn't say it out loud. So I'm literally whispering, oh my God, this is the best. Because there were people all around me doing yoga and having mass. Oh my God, I can't believe what just happened. Yeah. And then you hang up and you kind of do a happy dance, but it's still got to be really quiet at the same time. That was very funny.
Downward dog. Yeah.
There was another moment where a client got an amazing project, and I just dropped off my youngest daughter at school in Glebe, and I got out of the car, and in the middle of Mountain Street in Ultimo, I did a happy dance on the road. It was a bunch of them. Jesus, I am so blessed. I'm so blessed to have had a career of 32 years with mostly wonderful times. That I've worked with, and I continue to work with extraordinary people here in the office. I've got associates that I've worked with now for like 14, 15 years. I've got clients that I've represented for over 25 years. I'm lucky to still be in the business. I'm lucky to still get a real buzz out of the things that we all do. So I think we're all kind of blessed to be doing what we like doing when we get the chance as much as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. The crossover these days between sort of the United States, the UK, the gap is just, becoming smaller and smaller. We could be sitting in our lounge room, as you say, doing a Skype conference or a Zoom call now, and then being on a plane over to the States. How have you found, sort of in more recent times, your connection with overseas and seeing that transfer of artists? Are people still hungry for Australians?
It's now seamless. It's totally, utterly seamless that we built up our list of contacts in America over a period of 18, 19 years. And so when the process of being able to self-test for leads and co-leads in projects started about 6 years ago. It meant that the clients didn't have to be sleeping on couches, didn't have to be, saving up or borrowing from their parents to pursue what they wanted to. Now they can do a self-test, take their time to get it right, the self-test. I'll touch upon a negative with that a little bit later.
Yeah.
And get recalls, get sent over there. You do the deal before you get on a plane, fly over there and be confirmed for the job. It's remarkable now that when a client says, is it okay if I'm in Melbourne, or is it okay if I live in WA for a period of time to save some money? It's like, well, of course,
Yeah.
you can do from wherever you are. The only element that doesn't work with that is that obviously it's still such a human connection industry that being in the room with the director or the producer or the creator or the casting, being in the room is still such a wonderful human process that you're still able to convey the nuances and all the things that you are to that, as opposed to a screen test. And also I think the self-tests tend to take a little bit of pressure off you, the sort of pressure that you actually should be putting yourself under. This on the other side of it is that you can take 3 to 4 hours to do a screen test and get it just right. Whereas if it wasn't a self-test, you've got 3 minutes to get it right. And that tends to hone a muscle within actors so that when the opportunity comes along and they're actually on set and they've got a shoot and they've got 30, 40 people all around them, they're prepared for that pressure. So self-test is wonderful, but at the same time, I think you might be missing that exercise of, I am so nervous I can't breathe. I've got to work out how to control it and take that to the set.
Yeah. How do you prepare your clients at the moment for, I guess there's that next level? You can do, workshops or watching people online or doing everything. What I guess, how do you step up to that? And you can't just miraculously go, well, I'm going to have a cup of tea and I'm going to be an amazing artist over in that next realm. For people to encourage them to get to that next stage, because it is an essence of seeing someone that you see on TV go, they've just got something. Is that learnt over experience, or is it something that they just have innately?
It's a little bit of both. There's certainly something very, very attractive about a natural talent, or that special quality that I'm asked, what is that special quality? And you simply can't define it. That quality that you'd actually love to continue to watch, or that mystery that you want to learn about, and therefore you want to see them on the screen. I think there's some wonderful training grounds all around the world to enable you and get you ready for that moment. And might I say, I think the actor knows when they're ready for that moment. I think they inherently know it. They might not tell anybody, but you know when you're as prepared and ready for the next stage in your life as you can be. There's, the projects like Home and Away and Neighbours and a whole range of ongoing series have enabled actors to be put under that pressure. I don't think it's an urban myth, but I think Home and Away shoots more scenes than just about any soap in the world. And it does it at an extraordinarily high level.
Yeah.
And you get the opportunity to work with amazing actors, actors that have been doing this for years and years, and learn from them. But you're also under that pressure. And I can remember a client that got their first project and they were shooting in New York, opposite Sean Bean. And the very first day, I called and said, how are you going? And the response was, it's just like what I've been doing, but on steroids. I'm ready for this. I'm used to having people around me, having expectations, getting my lines right, being centered, being prepared. You know, I'm ready for this because I've already done my apprenticeship in Australia.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure I completely answered your question, but I'm not sure I can completely
No,
answer.
yeah, and I think that there's a lot of people out there that do sort of speak about, well, of course, no, I'm ready for Home and Away. Or I'm ready. I deserve that. Or people say, you'd look great on that television show. Why aren't you doing that? I think there are so many different elements of that. Somebody could not be seen for half their career, and then all of a sudden they're catapulted into, that top 8% or top 2% of people that are working in that particular field. Look, I think we have to enjoy the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of no matter how old you are or where you are at your career. If you love it, like you're saying, that you didn't feel those feelings of wanting to keep going forward, then why are you doing it? Go another way.
That makes a lot of sense. And also, the wonderful thing about what actors do is if they want to become better actors, there's an emphasis and an enthusiasm for them to become more educated, wider ranging human beings.
Yes.
You are encouraged to do research. You're encouraged to look into characters and people and history. And I think that's absolutely marvelous, because I know the actors that I love watching are generally very intelligent, very well read, with an enormous sense of self-depreciation, but they know their place in the world. And I can't imagine another career where you're encouraged. Well, the only way you can get this particular side of your work right is you need to go out and read about 17th century art, because that's the artist you're going to play. So it's like, great, I'll go out and I'll read up and do as much work as I possibly can. I'll wear the clothes. I'll drink what they were drinking in the goblets. How extraordinary is that?
Yeah.
It's so rich. And so we're lucky. I feel like I stumbled into what I do, and I actually hadn't seen any live theatre until I was 20 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
I came from an environment in Melbourne which wasn't one that encouraged acting or the arts. And I was lucky enough to stumble and be encouraged by one person along my way. And the very first play I saw was Melbourne Theatre Company's Metamorphosis.
Oh.
And I still think my head never quite made its way back into its position after I walked out into that street in the top end of Melbourne, and I couldn't talk for like 30, 40 minutes. I just walked around. What I had just experienced was something I'll never, ever forget. So I love the fact that I can still watch television or film or go to theatre and occasionally be just as inspired from what I've just watched.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm watching Ricky Gervais, the second series.
Afterlife. Yeah.
It's called Afterlife. Oh my God. I'm sitting there crying last night watching the second episode of this man. He's just...
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's great. I mean, I guess that is something that I listened to another interview that you did on a podcast with Rachel, in the sense of how much you read.
Yes, I've become very, very popular on podcasts. Who would have thought?
You mentioned that you're reading X amount of scripts each week. You're reading a book each, a couple of books each week. How important is that? I mean, that for me sort of sparked. I've not read a lot of books in my early years, but now that is all I'm doing is reading and reading. And I feel that in itself is encouraging me to think outside where I've ever thought about before. The imagination. I mean, I can pick up a self-help book and I'm like, yes, I'm really positive and my world is great. But letting your imagination go, then just opens you up to something completely different.
Oh, absolutely. I'm books, scripts. I read a lot in my younger life, and then read more about what I liked, what I wanted to read, what I liked reading, as opposed to reading what I had to read. And then the scripts, when clients were successful overseas, and I became part of an international team, and I'm being sent these scripts that are world-class level scripts written by the most extraordinary writers, without me even becoming aware of it until later. My level of reading and expectation in the script was so greatly heightened, and I was just educated. I was being educated, without realizing I was being educated. I think that openness you just talked about is so vital in all of us, and to keep that curiosity of spirit that we all need. Because I just said to my wife, I decided during all of this that I wanted to learn how to sketch. So I went online to Udemy, and I think that's how you pronounce it. And I enlisted for a sketching, tutorial, which goes over a period of 10 weeks. And within like 2 weeks, I started looking at objects completely differently. They weren't objects anymore. They were a whole collection of shades and contrasts. Yeah. And I started looking around the place that I lived, and I realized that pieces of art that I had could be placed in such a way that it would actually highlight the architecture and the height of the place, the property that I live in. Mm. And so, reading, learning, educating yourself in yet another area just presented me with a new learning that I never expected. So even at 62, I often say I don't mind being the dumbest man in the room, and I'm quite often that person. But as long as I don't walk out of that room the dumbest person, I need to have learned something from that experience.
Absolutely. I guess it'd be wonderful to sort of see these scripts in Australian television, and there are some wonderful series and teleseries that we see. Why do you think there is such a big difference that we're not seeing a lot of Australian content coming on, being produced by Australia in the industry? I know that we have these wonderful writers and we have these wonderful scripts waiting there. Why is there such a difference between America and Australia? Or not even America, just I guess difference of why we're not seeing a higher level of scripts being produced?
Well, I think it's very easy to forget that America's got 320 million people and we've got 27. So they've got over 10 times the volume of script writers, 10 times the number of processes where a script can be developed and produced. So, and also you've got an industry, you've got Los Angeles or California. I can remember one of the first times I jumped in a cab there and was driven around, and the driver asked me, so tell me, what's the population of Australia? And I said, 26 million at the time. He said, oh, shit, man, California's got 72 million. The sheer volume of people endeavoring to get into the industry, in particular Los Angeles, or to a lesser degree New York, is enormous. Everyone's writing a script. Everyone's seeing themselves as a writer or a director or a producer. So they tend to be constantly creating and doing speculation or spec scripts. And for a producer to have a spec script that is an extraordinary script in front of them, to be able to actually go out and market and raise money on that script is an amazing asset.
Yes.
That doesn't happen in Australia as much, because quite rightly, good writers should be paid what they're worth. Yeah. But in America, everyone is so ambitious about being that person that they're willing, or that they choose to write a script that can get encouraged by one of the many platforms like the Blacklist, for instance, where scripts are entered. And I don't know how many are presented to them, but there's thousands of applications that go through to Blacklist. They're read, assessed, and then it's honed down to, I think it's 30 finalists. And hang on one second. One second. Background noise there. How do I put this? Having 30 scripts to read in the next week, they're all reasonably good scripts that have got a good chance of a producer attaching themselves to maybe one of those projects. Lends itself to a commercial environment. You know, I would suggest that a commercial environment tends to motivate people to create more. We don't necessarily have as commercial an environment as America does. And so therefore, a lot of our processes are thankfully, until recently, funded significantly by state and federal government. When you're writing a script in your one bedroom set in Santa Monica, and you're hoping that that script is going to be able to get its way through to an agent, it's going to get its way through to so and so, and it's going to get produced. There is no state or federal funding behind that. Yeah. The only way you're going to pay your rent for 6 months' time is somebody options your script for an amount of money. Mm-hmm. So the ambition, I think the motivation behind the projects elsewhere in the world as opposed to here are slightly different. And so therefore we don't see as many projects, but I do think it's a lot to do with volume, sheer utter volume. And we've also grown up, remember, we've grown up watching and being part of American society and television and Lost in Space and Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. And I've met a lot of wonderful actors along the time, and their dream is to fly to LA and get off the plane and land at LAX and go out and see their dream. So inherently, we've kind of we've adopted that elsewhere is better than here. And that's not correct. That's so not correct. Yeah. But our audience here in Australia tends to believe that they'd much rather watch a US production rather than an Australian production. And we need to resolve that quickly whilst we've still got a chance at the industry. Because otherwise we're simply in the export business. And I don't just want to be doing that. I'm aiming to produce more projects here myself. And I've been lucky enough to produce projects before for television and film. And I love everything about Australia. I had many an opportunity to live and work in the States, but I adore this place. Yeah. I adore the people and what we represent and what we're about and what we've got to say. And I want to encourage more projects that are created and produced here, but we don't limit ourselves by the projects that we're creating here, that we've always got our ambitions in our eye on the horizon with the projects, that it's not an Australian project, it's a project. First and foremost.
Yeah, I guess that answers my question. I was about to ask that, why can't we produce something that is an American story with Australian actors with American accents and embodying that? That's what inherently what we're doing. When we go over there, we're telling stories of American stories and shooting them in the States. Yet we could probably produce those stories here that the country actually are watching.
Yeah. And we have. I would just love to see more. I don't want to go to another dinner party where people talk about great American projects. I'd love everyone to be sharing, their story about an Australian project that then happened to be embraced by the rest of the world.
I've just seen recently, just watching Stateless. It's got an incredible cast, and it's harrowing. Sometimes that's happening in our backyard, or has been happening for years, the story itself. I know we've got a couple of the Morrissey clan in there. I guess to those actors coming back from overseas and telling these stories and being a part of them, is that something that they're communicating to you that, look, I just want to come back and I want to do something at home? Or is it just an offer because they've been over there, that's where they are now?
Stateless is a really great example to use. Stateless was presented to me as a script about two and a half years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was sent through for me to read for one of my other clients, Australian clients that have done well in America. His team and that particular actor, we all agreed this really was an amazing script. Yeah. And he came within a hair's breadth of being involved in it, but a feature film came along and timing. And then another of my actors, I then suggested there's another actor that could do this role as well. And strangely enough, that fell through because the international team didn't actually realise I could see the significance of this story. An Australian can see the significance of this story, but the American partners in this particular instance just didn't understand the relevance to what the story was saying. They didn't get it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, obviously Jai was reading it. And Jai Courtney, might I say, is one of the most extraordinary, intelligent, well-read actors that I've been lucky enough to meet. You send Jai a project and Jai reads it almost immediately and comes back with the most wonderful, extraordinary notes. He's so detailed and precise in what he does. And his response was so immediate, and it therefore enthused the worldwide sales enthusiasm around this already well-cast project. Yeah. And it just became another wonderful piece of the puzzle to get the project done. But, I mean, as you said, Stateless is quite extraordinary. The distributor, this is an interesting point, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of grief for what I'm about to say, but the platform of the partner that presented that here in Australia, they made certain marketing choices based on the Australian eyeballs that would watch this project, and therefore marketing decisions were made. And if we want to get better, if we want our projects to have more of a reach, having extraordinary people like Jai Courtney in a project should be enthused more. There's many actors, not necessarily on my books, they'd killed to come back here. But we as an industry also have to grow up a little and understand if an international is going to come back who happens to be Australian, we have to embrace all the things that means.
Yes.
Whether that's in PR or marketing or the way it's presented, it deserves us to lift our game.
I guess because, the hype is probably around feature films more so than a telly series. It doesn't seem to have the same gravitas. But at the moment, I mean, television series are being made, with just as big a budgets as feature films. So I can understand what you're sort of saying there, and maybe that is an encouragement of what we can do as an industry. Around a lot of things. I think it's not just, especially with theatre and musicals and screen and films and things like that. there is an element of how we celebrate our industry and how we encourage not just the people that have been in the industry, like, for years and years, and they have a household name. Before they have a household name, let's make them an Australian name. Let's make them an Australian, institution that the world starts to look at and go, oh, hang on, we want them now, not just we want to be over there.
Yeah. I think one of the clever things, one of the smartest and one of the dumbest things that American Film Society ever did was create the star system. And the star system encourages people to want to go see somebody in the industry, but at the same time, it's self-limited itself by the star system of not being open enough in the casting process.
Yes.
But we don't tend to have that in Australia because of the way we conduct ourselves sometimes. A person gets to a certain level of success, and I see it often where all of a sudden the media starts just subtly turning on them.
Yeah.
And I don't know what comes first, whether that's the media's responding to their audience and writing what the audience wants, or whether the audience... One of the most wonderful things about returning to Australia after being away is that sense of enthusiasm about everything that's possible. Yeah. Sometimes here we tend to get caught up on what's not possible as opposed to what is possible. And it's wonderful to meet and do business with people that anything, blue sky, let's talk about blue sky. Let's talk about the what if. And that's always quite inspiring, very inspiring to be around.
Absolutely. Mark, I could talk to you for hours, but I don't think we've got enough time. Thank you very much for joining me on the show. I know a lot of people will take away a lot of wins from this. I think there's a lot of positives that the industry can sort of sit back in the next couple of months and think about what we want to go back to and how we can change. And I think you certainly hit a few nails on the head there, and definitely room for discussion a lot more. So thank you, Mark. And
thank you for the opportunity, mate. Appreciate it.